Always great catching up with my next guest, Lauren Murphy, who's got another big fight coming up here, this time against Cynthia Calvillo at UFC 254 on October 24th. Lauren, how's it going? Great catching up with you.
Yeah, awesome. Everything's good, man. Loving Houston, loving the process, loving my camp. So I'm just super excited to go out to Fight Island, and yeah, I love my job these days. It's great.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you about that. What does it mean to be, first off, have this fight, because it is a big fight. We'll talk about the implications in a second. But, I mean, you're on the same card as Khabib and Gaethje. You're going to be going to Fight Island. Like, what does that feel like to have an opportunity like this? Someone, like yourself who's really put in the work during your career.
Yeah, no, I feel like it's finally starting to pay off. I'm definitely not an overnight success. Like, it took 10 years of really hard work. Yeah. And a lot of trial and error. And, I've made like every mistake I think a fighter can make through my career, but I'm super happy that I've had the opportunity to learn from all of them. And honestly, I just feel so grateful and so excited because they could have put us on a Vegas card easily. We're both Americans. They could have easily, put us on a different card, but to be on the biggest card of the year, and then also in February, at that time, that was the biggest card of the year. So to be on two really, really big cards this year, to get 4 fights almost, like I think 4 fights in 13 months or 14 months, something like that. That's awesome. Like, I've made a ton of money. I've gotten a lot of really great experience in the last year. And I just feel really honored that the UFC put 2 Americans on that Fight Island card, that they're willing to fly us out there. Give us the whole Fight Island treatment, and the whole Fight Island experience. And I think it's like I'm finally starting to show the UFC that I'm worth putting on these cards. I'm an exciting fighter. I show up, I make weight every time, I put on a good show, I'm tough, I'm mean, and I'm ready to go win this fight.
Yeah, and it's really translated well in the cage. I love to see that you're in a good place. I was going to say happy place, but that sounded kind of weird. But you know what I mean. Like, you seem really great, and I know there's been a lot of changes. We talked about this in the last interview. No manager, you're in Houston now, like you mentioned. It seems like things are really coming together, and that was really put on display in your last fight against Roxanne Modafferi. Just a dominant win. You must have been pretty happy with that performance, especially because Roxy's a pretty tough fighter, and you went out there and got a pretty decisive victory.
Yeah, it felt good to have a dominant victory, but honestly, I had a really, really, really tough weight cut for that fight, okay. And it really slowed me down. So I remember walking out of the cage and they were like, "How do you feel about your performance?" And I was like, I thought that was awful because
really?
I felt
okay.
I felt like I should have been able to finish her. Mm-hmm. I was even in some positions, like there was 2 points in the fight where I was in a finishing position. One time I had her rocked on the feet with a hard right hand and I tried to follow up but couldn't quite get the finish. And one time I was almost on her back and just couldn't. I mean, she's such a good grappler. Roxanne hasn't been finished in 10 years. Like, nobody's finished her in a decade, and I wanted to be the first, Well, not the first, but the first in a decade,
Right. No, I know what you meant. Yeah.
And honestly, a lot of stuff happened. It was a short camp, kind of. It was during quarantine, so the gyms were closed. I didn't get to do a lot of the workouts and cardio and stuff that I usually get to do during camp. And so my weight was just really, really high. And then I got really stressed about it. And so it went really even higher. And then I got my period, which I know a lot of fighters talk about, or a lot of females talk about as an excuse for missing weight. And it did jack up my weight a little bit, and it made the cut harder. But I was like, I am not missing weight. Right. I am not going to miss weight. Yeah. And so it was a much tougher weight cut. I think it drained me a little bit, and we've just managed it so much better this time around. I'm almost 7 pounds lighter right now than I was at this point last time. So that'll make the cut a lot easier, I think.
Well, that's great. That's got to make the win feel even better, knowing all the stuff you had to overcome. I mean, obviously you're not 100% when you go into every fight, but I mean, the circumstances you described, you brought up sort of, the weight cut and all that. I remember Jessica I missed weight when she was on her period, and a lot of people didn't even remember that. They're still like, oh, you're the girl who missed weight. So it's like, you don't want that stress, right? Like, it kind of sucks when that stuff sort of happens. So props to you for going out there and getting the victory. And this matchup, I mean, this seemed like such an obvious fight with Cynthia getting her win over Jessica I imagine this is what you were expecting for the next fight, or even, maybe a title shot, just because you've looked really good in your last couple of fights.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of surprised that they put Jennifer Maia in for the title.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah, because it's funny. I've asked a bunch of other flyweights, and some of them are like, yeah, I get it. But she lost to Caitlin Chukagian a couple of fights ago, right?
She's 1-1 in her last 2, and she's missed weight twice out of her last 3. So it's like, I understand that she got a finish, but she armbarred a blue belt that took the fight on a week's notice.
Yeah.
So to me, that's not that impressive, really. Like if I fought Joanne Calderwood and I had a full camp and Joanne Calderwood had 1 week's notice, I think a lot of flyweights would probably finish her on the ground. And I don't mean that as a slight at JoJo, because I think with a full camp, she's very, very tough. She's obviously a very good fighter, but I was not very impressed with Jennifer Maia's win. I think the UFC wants to see me finish somebody. I think they want to make sure that, that my appearance is good, that I'm doing good interviews, that I'm, halfway marketable for them. And I think if I can show them that, and if I can have a great fight with Cynthia and hopefully get a finish, then I don't think there's any denying that the next title shot is mine. But those are things that I've been like really minding the last couple of years, especially since The Ultimate Fighter is like, I understand that in the sport, it's an entertainment sport. And so I had to listen to some of the fan feedback, and it was hard, but you have to hear that stuff sometimes and come out the other side better for it. And I think I've done that. And I'm looking forward to putting that on display in this fight. Like this is my chance now to show the UFC, like I am ready not only to fight for the championship, but to be a champion. A lot of, like, anybody can fight for the championship, but to be ready to be a champion is a whole other deal.
No, very well said. And by the way, this is why I love doing interviews with you. I love the honesty, because I've asked a lot of other fighters about that title shot, and they're kind of like, well, I get it. But it's like, I mean, that's got to annoy some people, like you said, with her missing weight and doing all that. And I'm not talking badly about her. I'm just, it was the UFC's decision to give her that shot. So I like the honesty on that. Now, Cynthia, obviously, coming off that win over Jessica Ai. One of the things I wanted to ask you about this fight is that, you've been a mainstay at flyweight for a while. And Cynthia, this was just her second fight moving up the weight class. How much of an advantage do you think that is in the weight class, just with, having fought flyweights before, whereas Calvillo's only had the one fight?
Man, I fought featherweights before.
Exactly. Yeah. Higher weight classes. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I just posted about this on Instagram actually, but it's like, I have knockouts in 3 different weight classes, at featherweight, bantamweight, and flyweight. I have knockout finishes. I've been ranked in the top 10 in 3 different weight classes. And I think, Cynthia coming up, she fought Jessica Ai again. That was a short notice fight. So it's not like you're getting the best Jessica Ai the world has ever seen. I think Jessica Ai has had far better fights than the one that she had. You give her a 5-round fight with 2 weeks notice, that just, to me, you're not going to see the best out of either fighter. It probably wasn't Cynthia's best performance either, but it's like, it just doesn't impress me much. I don't understand why it impresses the UFC so much. I don't know. I don't really care, honestly. Like, I'm going to show them why my performance is going to be impressive.
Yes. Well, I think if we're going to kind of try to dissect this, I mean, I was ranked number 2, so I think that's why they felt she got the shot. And then it seemed like even before that, I remember when she was at strawweight, they were really kind of fast tracking her until she ran into Carla Esparza, and then she got suspension. So I think you can kind of see where the UFC is coming from. And like you said, we're just calling it like it is. Like, that's how the UFC likes to market their fighters. So it's sort of understandable there. Now, if anyone's been following you on Instagram, it looks like you've had a great camp. Not, a little bit better than last time, obviously. How have things gone, and who have you got to work with?
I work a lot with a guy named Jacob Berry. He's like one of my very favorite, best sparring partners. He can emulate anybody. So that's been really awesome to work with him. My husband, Joe, he's brilliant. I'm really, really blessed to live with a black belt and have such a great coach under him. He is a phenomenal jiu-jitsu instructor and wrestling coach. So that's a huge advantage I think I have. I honestly, James, I have like the best team in the world. There's 7 of us. And not including my sparring partners. And it's such a good team, and we all work so cohesively. And I have people that are literally the best in the world at what they do. So my nutritionist is literally the best in the world. My strength and conditioning coach is Andy Galvin. He's the best in the world. One of my striking coaches, Bob Perez, again, he's literally one of the best in the world. And so I feel like I have this really, really elite team around me, and I don't know. I couldn't ask for a better camp. And then they provide me with sparring partners. Like, that's how I met Jacob, was through Bob. And Jacob is a reliable, consistent sparring partner. He can set a perfect pace for me. Like, Jacob could whip my ass if he wanted to at any point. But he's a great sparring partner because he can push me and push me and push me while emulating my opponents, So yeah, it is. It's been a great camp. I've gotten to swim this camp more, which I think my cardio will be better. I won't be so hesitant to pull the trigger, I think. And I'm going to have a much, much better weight cut. So the weight cut last time, when I went to the cage, I felt sleepy. Like I just couldn't wake up. And I was telling Andy Galpin about it, and he said it was probably from the weight cut. So this time we just managed it so much better. I got my weight low really, really early. So the flight won't affect it. The travel's not going to affect it. We're going to be just fine.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. That's good. You kind of game plan for that, because some fighters don't, think about that you're retaining water when you're traveling, and then sometimes you might not get the food you want down there. I mean, I know the UFC takes care of you guys in that regard, but it's still a big factor. One thing I wanted to ask you about your camp too, you sort of mentioned it's like a smaller, more focused thing. That seems to suit your style better, right? Because I know you've been at big gyms in the past, and sometimes you can get lost in the shuffle. Would you say that's another reason why it's been more beneficial being at this sort of smaller camp?
Yeah, absolutely. Because at this level, I think you need to have your coaches focused on you. Like, you can't just be another number kind of going through the motions with an entire big team. Not at this level. You know, at this level, you need to have coaches that can game plan, coaches that will watch tape and understand what's going to happen in the fight. You have to have coaches that understand strength and conditioning specific for you. So I think the whole world knows I'm not the fastest fighter in the world. So I needed a strength and conditioning program that focused a lot on speed and being able to sustain explosive movements. I'm very, very strong. I've always been very strong. I could carry 1,000,000 pounds, 1,000,000 miles if you wanted me to. But as far as being like fast and explosive, I really needed some work there. And it wasn't until I started working with Andy that I got a really specialized program that enhanced that, you know what I mean, and really focused on making that a priority for me. I didn't even know you could do that until I met Andy,
Yeah.
And I have coaches that can watch tape. They can break down my opponent. I feel like when I go into a fight now, I know what's going to happen. I know what I need to do to win. I know what direction to take the fight so that I can win. And that just makes me feel so comfortable and confident in there. And I think that's why you guys have been seeing such much better performances from me.
How's the fight playing out? That's the question here, because it's an interesting style matchup between the two of you. And like you said, I know you said the UFC wants to see you get a finish. How do you envision the fight playing out?
I have 8 TKOs on my record, and I think Cynthia is going to be number 9.
I think most people watching the sport feel like the winner of this is going to fight the winner of Shevchenko Maia. Have you been given any indication of that?
No, and the monkey wrench in the whole works is going to be Jessica Andrade coming up the week before.
Right, against Chookagian.
So they booked that fight against the number 1 contender the week before Cynthia and I fight. And I think it's kind of the UFC's way of hedging their bets a little bit, so that they can kind of pick whichever one wins, maybe in a more dominant fashion. So we'll see. That's going to be an interesting fight because Andrade is a great fighter, but if anybody in the flyweight division has the recipe to beat Andrade, it's Caitlin Chookagian.
Yeah.
Like, truly. I mean, I was actually a little astounded that was the matchup that they made, because I was like, Caitlin has the perfect style and just the perfect recipe to beat Andrade, I think. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, we'll just have to see how it plays out. I don't know. I try not to put too much thought and energy into it, but of course, I know the fight is happening, so of course I have thought about it, and we'll just have to see how it all plays out in the moment, how my fight plays out with Cynthia, and kind of just go from there.
Well, and the other thing with Caitlin as well, she's tough to finish. I think Valentina is the only one to ever finish her in her career. Most of her fights go the distance, so it could be interesting if Andrade isn't able to finish like she couldn't against Rose in that second fight. So we'll see how that unfolds there. I don't want to look too far ahead here, but I mean, we do like from my perspective, this is the fight that I think will get the title shot. We'll see, like you said, with that other matchup. But I'm sure you've thought about it, and I know you're not looking past Cynthia. But what would it mean to get a title shot after all these years, everything you've been through, from the first stint in the UFC to the Ultimate Fighter to all the stuff you've had to sort of go through, switching camps and getting that opportunity? I'm sure you thought of that, but that must be so special if this was to end up, planning out the way you hope it will.
Yeah, of course. I keep putting it out there into the universe that I hope that that's the result, and I hope I do get to fight for the UFC title, because that truly is the pinnacle of a fighter's career. Mm-hmm. And it's my last dream, that I have in MMA. It's the only thing that I still dream about that I haven't accomplished yet. Every promotion I've ever been signed to, I've won the belt for in my division. I've like I said, I've been ranked in the top 10 in 3 different weight classes. I've won a fight of the night bonus in the UFC. I've been in 2 different divisions in the UFC. I've done the Ultimate Fighter. I've been really the highest highs, the lowest lows. I've had a ton of really cool experiences. Like, my career's been a dream. Honestly, it really truly has been like beyond my wildest dreams. But the last thing I could ever really hope for, and my last like great wish in this sport, is to fight for the UFC title and hopefully become a UFC champion, and you know, defend the belt a few times and then move on with my life. That would be like, you know. And so I don't know, things rarely work out as perfectly as we want them to, but I do hope that before the end of my career, I hope I get a chance to fight for the UFC title.
Yes, and obviously October 24th, big implications there. Before we get out of here, one thing I wanted to ask you about, I see you're back on Twitter now, which is great because obviously I like your tweets. And, you know, I talked about your honesty and I like it, honestly. I do. I like the fact that you speak your mind. You're not worried, you know, about what other people think. But I got to give you some props here. You know, there was that whole discussion a couple of weeks ago about, you know, Esther Lin leaving, you know, the sport. And, you know, there was this talk of how, you know, internet trolls were part of the reason she left. I don't believe that's fully the case. I think it more has to do with the fact that, you know, she can't actually take photographs right now because of the COVID restrictions. But there's that whole discussion with Luke Thomas, and I like Luke, and I'm not saying this in any way, but I saw that you know, responded to that, and Luke saying that, well, it's not the journalists that write the headlines, it's these other people. But I think that's a cop-out, because you know what? There's people that cover this sport that, you know, do a good job, and you can still get people interested in your articles, but you don't have to be misleading. And this is something we talked about last time with your whole thing with MMA fighting. But I didn't like how people were piling on you for that opinion, because I don't think it's wrong. I think people, they can be deceiving, and it's not every outlet, but there are some. And what you were kind of trying to say there, and correct me if I'm wrong, was that this sort of feeds into the fandom of like people want to like dunk on each other. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's true. And I didn't think people piled on me for it. I think,
well, I saw one journalist kind of go and be like, that's not how things work. And it's like, well, why don't we just have a discussion about this instead of like, you know, trying to make this like, you're wrong, I'm right type thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know Luke very well at all. I understand why he might be a little defensive. I think Ben Folks was actually the one that was like, hey, the editors write the headlines. Yeah. And I said, well, you know, to me, it all looks like media to me, like you or your editor. It could be either one writing the headlines, but it's all media. You guys work for the same company, you know? Yeah. And I really like Ben Folks. I like reading his stuff. I think he's a brilliant journalist. Jonathan Snowden also commented on it and was like pretty rude, but that's just him on Twitter, you know? Right. And I think he's a really brilliant writer as well. I love reading their stuff. I love to read. I like to write also, but the truth is that journalists need to make money. And the way they make money is by getting people to click on their articles. Mm-hmm. The way you get somebody to click on your article is to write a snazzy headline. That's just the way it works. And I have to understand that as somebody that gets interviewed, and they have to own that as the journalists, you know? Yes. And there is a way to write headlines where you can get people interested and you can get people clicking on your articles, and you can be a well-known journalist making a lot of money without faking your headlines, without piling hate on the people that you're writing about, without having these like gotcha clickbait headlines, you know? Right. And it's sad when journalists have to resort to that. It's like the used car salesman of media. It's like, it's just a really cheap tactic, and I've had it happen to me a couple times now. Stephen Morocco's not the first to write a headline like that about me. It's happened a couple times. He's one of the few, though, that I've been able to actually like confront and track down. A lot of times they do it and there's no way to even find that guy.
Accountability. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So at least Stephen Morocco could like face the music, and at least he had the balls to talk to me. That I actually appreciate, you know. Mm-hmm. But to me, it is true. And I've learned that, you know, over the last couple of years, that if you want people to click on an article or click on a video, you have to get them interested so they don't just scroll on by. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times journalists resort to making headlines that are going to grab your attention, whether they're true or not.
Yeah. And I agree. Like, I understand that's a part of it. And I'm part of the media. I know that I've had to make headlines sometimes that aren't going to make people thrilled to read stuff or to check out my videos or anything like that. But at the same time, my sort of thing with that whole discussion was that is the accountability, that's saying that like, oh, we're not really like this, but it's like, it does happen. Like, my whole thing is like, it's not all media, but there are some people, like there's certain sites, we don't need to mention them, that do go out of their way to really sensationalize things that just aren't even there. You know what I mean? Like, that's sort of what I was getting at. And I felt like people were kind of, you know, going a little hard on you for no reason, because it's like, this does happen, and I'm telling you this as someone who covers the sport. So that's all I was kind of getting at. It
definitely happens, but you know, and then we also have to recognize, okay, fighters say dumb stuff, and we say stuff out of anger. We have tempers. Like, obviously we have kind of crazy personalities because that's what we do, and sometimes we make it super easy for people to write headlines like that.
Of course,
and
yeah.
so that's another thing I've had to learn is like, if I'm going to say it, I have to be prepared for it to be a headline blasted out to the world, you know? Mm-hmm. And so fighters need to realize that also. So, I didn't want to, it's not all the media, clearly. Mm-hmm. We do say dumb stuff and crazy stuff. And there's a element to like the mob mentality. Israel Adesanya was just talking about it after his last fight, where he was like, the fans on individual levels are so great. And I found that to be true too. Whenever I meet somebody, they are always kind. Whenever I talk to somebody one-on-one, even online, they're kind, they're reasonable. But this mob mentality kind of takes over, and it's a real thing, you know, where suddenly people feel very empowered. They feel anonymous. They feel like they can say anything they want. Maybe they're having a bad day and they just decide to be mean to somebody. So the mob mentality is a real thing. Fighters saying stupid shit is a real thing. And the media trying to make money is a real thing. So to just focus on one aspect of it is so wrong. Like the fighters can't just go, well, it's the media, and the media can't just go, well, it's the fans, and then the fans go, well, it's the fighters, you know? So everybody's kind of pointing their fingers at each other, but truly I think we all do play a part. You know?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And again, it's the perfect storm of like, you know, you got people online saying they can do whatever they want because there's no accountability, right? Like, it's not like you're going to come to someone's door and be like, why did you say that about me? Because obviously they wouldn't say it if they were in someone's face or whatever. But no,
Did you see Mike Perry put that guy's address online?
I didn't see that, no, but it wouldn't surprise me if Mike Perry did something like that.
Somebody said something to Mike Perry. It was a fan. He said something stupid and kind of nasty to Mike Perry, maybe even about his girlfriend. And Mike Perry found that guy's address.
Yikes.
And said, he put it on his Twitter. He said, is this your address, homie? I don't know. Mike Perry's crazy enough to show up at your house.
Right. That's what I mean. Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, so on some level, it's like, y'all got to be careful. Like that, you know, when you do talk shit to a fighter, yeah.
It can happen. No, absolutely. And it's one, and I also want to remind people out there that like Twitter isn't the entire fan base. There's just a small, you know, there's a section of fans that, you know, can say whatever they want. But I think the majority of the fans, the people that are buying the pay-per-views and stuff, that's not everyone on social media. I always like to remind people that because people get confused. They think Twitter is reality. It's not all the time. So
it's not. And Twitter does just kind of have a culture of like hate and shit talk. Yeah. Because I meet people a lot, especially women that are like, I love you. I loved you on The Ultimate Fighter. I love that you stand up for yourself. I love your honesty, you know, and that's the kind of stuff that I really take with me.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. And this is a great fight. UFC 254, October 24th. Lauren, appreciate the time as always. Just remind people where they can find you on social media. And if you got any sponsors or shout outs, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Blackout Coffee, for sure. They've been sponsoring me through this camp. I love them. I love their coffee. So make sure you guys hit them up. The link is in my bio, and I post about them all the time. And I just want to give a big shout out to my team. Like I said, there's 7 of us. It's Matteo Capodoglio, my nutritionist. Andy Galpin oversees all my strength and conditioning. Jimmy Kaiser is my trainer, so he carries out the plan that Andy puts in place. Alex Cisne. Nobody knows him, but he's one of the best in the world. Just seriously one of the best MMA coaches in the world. He'll be on Fight Island with me, along with my husband, Joe Murphy. And then Bob Perez doesn't get to come with us this time because we could only take so many people, and I kind of have to have my nutritionist. But Bob Perez has helped me so much this camp. He is an amazing, amazing, amazing coach. And then I'm the last one. So, yeah. We've just had a great camp. I love my team. I love where I'm at. And thank you for having me on today. Oh, and you guys can all find me, Lauren Murphy, MMA, on Twitter most of the time. Every once in a while, I'll duck out of there, but I'm on Twitter most of the time. And I'm always on Instagram. And so I usually do answer fans and stuff, and I like interacting with the fans. So you guys can hit me up, Lauren Murphy, MMA.